your girl Shay.
And this is Sydney.
And we are at home with the Oz. Today we are so blessed to have a special guest, someone very dear to us, someone very near to us, our beautiful sister in love and sister in Christ, Maxine Hetep. Hey girl!
Greetings all. It's a pleasure to be here. This is just, a long anticipated conversation, so I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Ready to dive in. Amazing. So what we're doing today is we're talking about nutrition and living as a vegan. So something that me and my husband always discuss. So my husband loves a lot of meat because he's an African man. But I'm kind of diverse. I'm a Jamaican, but we still love meat, but we still like to mix it up. So we've been trying to learn a bit more about healthy eating, veganism and nutrition, and mixing it in with the culture. How can we bring it into the culture? Because we are known as people that over season our food, have big portions, not really having the nutrients and the vitamins that we need in our food. So today Maxine is here to help us and open up our minds to vegan food and see if she can encourage some people out there to try it. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to my amazing husband to start with our first.
Just before we continue, I just want to say from the onset that I am in no way an expert on veganism.
Disclaimer.
I think it's very clear.
Disclaimer.
That I make that very clear because this conversation is about sharing my experiences, and we gain from sharing. We learn from each other. So I'm hoping that's what we'll be doing today.
We sure gonna do. She's an expert in cooking it though. I'm telling you. Okay, I eat it all the time. But yeah, so our first section, we're gonna have our food and nutrition. So over to my amazing husband.
Yeah. You know what, Maxine? I would love us and the audience as well to actually get to know how you started this journey into veganism and what really inspired you into that culture.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So I started my journey of veganism almost 11 years ago, and it started with doing some research on animals, just the way that they were kept. I was just looking at animals, how they were treated on the farms, and what put me off was the avoidable suffering that I saw animals go through. And it just made me feel like every time I eat meat, I am feeding into that system, and I just don't want to be a part of it. So my way of making a stance against it was to stop eating meat. And I started to do research on veganism, and in Jamaica we say "aital." So it wasn't a new concept, because I think veganism came from the aital tradition. So the more I researched it, is the more it appealed to me. And I want to say that when I started, it wasn't just I fell into veganism and that was it. Everything was great. I fell off a few times, the more I researched and the more I got creative with cooking vegan food, was the more I just loved it and introduced it to my daughter, my family. They loved it, and it's just been a journey for me, because the way how I cook vegan food now, that is a process that that has been something that developed over time. So anybody considering looking at it, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. And everyone has their own journey, and it's going to be different for everyone.
You know what, I've heard you talking of what you saw the animals going through and all that.
Yeah.
And I know some people may have a contrary view about it, and let's say have some sort of misconception and I'm very sure I'm one of the victims here. So I would just love to ask you, have you ever heard about the misconception people have about going the vegan way? What sort of misconception have you heard?
One of the main misconceptions is vegan food tastes bland. That, you know, what are you eating? I've heard someone say, "What are you eating today? Grass?"
No, we ain't a cow.
You know, so you know that, you know, it's really just a bit, you know, a bit silly. And you know, I think everyone can use their imagination to imagine, you know, what a vegan meal might look like, and it definitely is not grass. So yeah, it's, you know, that idea that, you know, if you don't have meat on the plate, then your food is going to taste, it's going to be tasteless, it's going to be bland. And so I have committed myself to prove otherwise.
Absolutely. You sure do, girl. She proves otherwise. Let me tell you, she does not disappoint. Okay? Anybody heard about vegan fried fish? Okay? No, y'all ain't ready. I'm telling ya, she does not disappoint.
And
thank you for the plugs.
Sister Maxine, I being a Christian, knowing very well also on how profound you are in our religion, let me say. Though I know my dad-in-law usually say he follows the teachings of Christ, and
sorry, can you expound on that a little bit more, because I need to be clear.
I know, okay, like my dad-in-law once told me, because he asked me, what church do I go? I told him I'm Catholic. And I asked him, what about you? He said, I'm a Baptist. Yeah?
Yes.
But he said, you see, when you do the religion practice and follow the doctrines, there's a very thin line between what the hypocrites and the teachers of the ones the church in the Bible used to do, whereby you are forced to follow the doctrines rather than the teachings of the Christ. Yeah, so
absolutely. Agree.
That's let me say the blueprint which he actually told me.
Yeah.
So if I'm to come to this question, we know that the Bible speaks about food in many ways,
About food,
from the Garden of Eden to the dietary laws, which are found in, is it Leviticus?
Yes.
Yes, and
Leviticus 11. If I'm not mistaken.
So how do you see the relationship between the biblical teachings and the plant-based lifestyle that you got yourself into?
I think a lot of research, and if you just dig a little bit into meat that people eat today, there's a lot of toxins, there's a lot of parasites in meat, and I think, and I'm not saying this to put you off, I'm just saying it because it's factual, and I just think we should, you know, strive towards clean eating as much as possible. And I'm saying that not excluding the vegan community, because everyone who is vegan is not necessarily following a healthy diet. There's a lot of foods on the market labeled, you know, vegan or plant-based, but the amount of additives, the amount of preservatives and harmful ones that are in the product, you know, you may as well be eating meat. So you know, plant-based lifestyles for me is all about clean living. So, you know, you can achieve that whether you eat meat or not. So I, as a vegan, I'm going to advocate for veganism because I have experienced the benefit of that. But I think in Leviticus 11, God sets out, the word of God sets out, foods that are going to safeguard us.
Yeah.
And so when you came to the dinner party that we had, we briefly covered this in a discussion about foods that are categorized as scavengers. And you're eating those, but you're also eating the foods that they've been scavenging of, and it's going into your system. And so I think we need to have an understanding, an ecological understanding of food, and the fact that we are a part of a chain.
Yeah.
And if we're eating food at the bottom of that food chain, and if they're eating foods that contaminate, and then we are ingesting that into our system, then it's going to have a adverse effect on our bodies.
And that one brings me to this question, because you've talked of you experiencing some benefits. So what sort of these benefits? Please expound more so that we understand.
Okay. So let me just start with my hair. My hair looks and feels stronger. It's healthier. My skin looks and feels much better. And that is part of the reason is the fact that I use my own products that I make on my skin.
You make your own products using plant-based as well.
All 100% natural. So when you think about clean lifestyle, it's not just what we take through our mouth and ingest. It's what we put on our skin that gets absorbed into our blood stream and enters our body that way. So we need to be mindful of this, and I don't think there's enough discussions about sort of lifestyle, healthy lifestyle, and clean living, because it is achievable. And so another way that I have benefited is flexibility, just the fact that I can just walk for hours. If I run down to the shops, if I need to run somewhere quickly, like 10 years ago I'd just be stopping, taking deep breaths. I just like now I just feel I have more vitality, and I feel better. I think if I just reflect back where I was in my 30s, sort of mid-30s, I feel better in myself. So it's it's that that feeling of wellness that you're feeding into.
Sorry, if I'm to take you back a little bit, you mentioned some very harsh words for us who eat meat.
I did. Me too.
Use the word scavenger. You're scavenging. I would love us to just tell us what you mean by when you say scavenging. And then you also talked about let me say the food processing, and you actually say the truth that it doesn't matter whether you are eating meat or not, but if some of the people who are also vegan do not necessarily have the best food choices for themselves. So if I'm to add a question on that, how will we reconnect with the more natural ways of eating that our ancestors used to practice? Because you have mentioned ital. Is it ital?
Ital, babes.
Yeah. Ital. Sorry, viewers. I'm no Rastafarian.
No one is Rastafarian. You represent Jesus, baby. Yes. Ital, baby.
Because
You're so sweet.
I call Jesus Yesu back in
Yesu,
our country.
Yeshua.
So
Yes,
yes.
yeah,
So,
that's correct.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sorry for pronouncing it the way we pronounce it back in Kenya.
No, that's fine. You pronounce it how you
no
pronounce it in
apologies.
Kenya.
So
No.
how
All about diversity.
what are the more natural ways of eating that will actually reconnect us back to the ancestral practice? Because you also mentioned that you have your own products for your hair and your skin and everything.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm going to tie the both of them together with my products and foods that I eat. Ito food is essentially living off the ground, living from nature, not adding to your food additives. So if I just take seasoning as an example, the seasoning that we use in food is way too salty. It's too salty. And the doctors know this, they recognize it, health leaders recognize this. And I don't think it's promoted enough. I don't think conversations about what's on the shelf, how we need to use the things, because people just tend to grab things and just use things without thinking that I think there's a lot of assumptions that what's out there is good for you. It's it's edible, it's not necessarily good for you. Anything with a high content of salt or sugar, it's literally causing health issues with our bodies. And so we just need to be mindful. We need to just be reflective about how we're living. We call it metacognition in education, when you're actually thinking about the process and reflecting and learning. But yes, there's that. So it's the additives that are in our food. It's the things that are put in food to preserve the food. And when you think about the so-called beauty industry, you think about what we put in our hair, ladies. What we put in our hair. What we put on what we put on our skin in the name of beauty. And I've done some research around the products that are marketed particularly to the Black community, and there is high levels of toxicity in the creams, in the hair products, in relaxers, ladies, in just even faux hair. They're chemicals that are sprayed on them, and this is something that causes deleterious effects to our health, such as cystic fibroids, endometriosis, having an adverse effect on our reproductive system. And we don't have these conversations enough in our community. So we need to be aware of the correlation between ill health, what we're eating, and what we're putting on our body.
I can second that as well as a hairdresser, one of my first trades in regards to the things. That's what made me have make the decision to grow locks and be more natural with my hair, and to use more natural products, because how you said the toxins that they spray in the hair. I had a few clients actually that brought hair from a shop, put it in their hair, and their hair had reactions of it caused dermatitis, alopecia, psoriasis, because of the toxin, loss of hair, because of the toxins on the hair. So that's why they tell you to wash your hair, or furthermore, no put nothing on your hair. Just use natural oils, natural products, and make your own. So I can absolutely agree with that.
Your locks look beautiful. I'm right behind you, sister. I'm right behind you.
I'll hook you up, girl, but can I point you?
ASAP.
ASAP, I can go. But in saying that, I think as well, it's like when you were talking about the sorts of as Jamaicans and also Africans, the things that we put in our foods in regards to the seasonings, it's also about how much we consume of that as well. So I think at times, like, it's fine to use them just to season your food and whatever, and also looking into, like I said, looking into what you're using. But I think a lot of the times we do over season, and we don't look at how much we're consuming of salt, of fats, of sugars, of so much things. And then we look at the black community, it's the highest for diabetes, high cholesterol, you know, all those kind of things. So when you looked at, when you said in regards to thinking about it first before you prepare it, before you cook it, before you eat it, it's very important even to make that small thought and decision. What am I going to do today?
Put more planning into, you know, the preparation.
And to be lazy.
Because a lot of the time people impulse and impulse shop. And when you think about it, you sit back and you just think, you know, I've got food in my fridge, I've got food in my cupboards, why did I do that? And you don't have a good...
We all did it there. We all do it, but we've got to do better.
Yeah, we've got to do better. We've got to do better.
Absolutely.
Like, home cooking has just become a great love of mine.
I can see the passion in your eyes, girl.
Look like you're going brown.
She's always passionate when she talks about her food, but I'm passionate when she talks about her food because I can eat it. So, you know, but no, she has such a passion for this kind of thing, and I'm so glad you're here sharing and informing us and encouraging us to go this way, especially as the black community. And we may not all, you know, straight away go into the vegan life, or we may not even fully go into the vegan life, but at least if we balance into certain things and make our lifestyle healthier, then it's a step. It's a step. It's a step.
I'm actually
and we learn from each other.
Yeah.
You know,
each one teach one.
I'm learning from you as much as you know, you learn from me. We're learning
each
from
one
each other.
teach one. Absolutely.
And the both of you have actually spoke so much. I would say I actually put it like it's more of food culture and our community.
Yes.
So do you think this is more of a mentality issue, or is it accessibility? Because there are some places whereby such plant-based are more expensive than get. And we also have the mentality whereby in Africa, you see, you went to Kenya, you see plant-based food, it's indoctrinated in us that is a poor kind of living. So
good discussion points.
So how do food accessibility and affordability impacts people's ability? And do you think this is more of accessibility thing, or just a mentality?
I think, I mean, the last point that you mentioned about the attitudes around veganism is set your own trend. Don't set your own trend. You may end up, you know, inspiring other people to, you know, rethink their diet and, you know, completely shift their perception on food. So if I went to Kenya, I would be cooking.
Hear that, guys? Y'all in ambassadors, you guys, all you and Creoles and all y'all, just listen.
They'll be getting, you know, a healthier, you know, version of fish, you know, chicken, substitute everything, because, you know, it's how we flavor food. You know, it's really interesting that you mentioned that about, you know, that the poor man's food, because as cultures, our social time centers around food.
Yes.
You know, good company, good food.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, sometimes when we decide that we're going to make a decision, when I became a vegan, you know, my sister has been my sister Gillette has been a vegan for about 40 plus years. She's been a vegetarian for 40 plus years. And it wasn't, you know, cool, and it, you know, she's the only one in our family. You know, I remember my dad used to say to her, oh, eat the meat, and she's just like, mm-mm. And she was very young when she made that decision, and no one understood it, but she had a conviction about it. So when you want to do something, just do it, and you will potentially inspire others to follow. So
all right.
So can I just touch on that in regards to it being a mentality and an accessibility?
Okay.
I think I even get that. So I think it's 50-50. For me, being brought up in Jamaican household, Jamaican family, whatever, a lot of the time it's a lot of, because we were brought up on this meat and this food, and a lot of it we kind of have adapted and adjusted ourselves to that kind of eating. So much that we become stubborn to, only meat is good for my body because it's going to make me strong and it's going to make me this and that. And then on the other hand, veganism, you'll even hear some of them like, that ain't going to do nothing for me, that's not going to fill me up, like you said, the misconceptions. So I do think it's 50% mentality, and if you accept it enough to change it a little bit, no one's saying you've got to change it a lot, but just accept it a little bit and kind of balance your plate and your portions. That's another thing as well. And in regards to accessibility, like if we talk about Africa, we talk about India, we talk about these countries, sometimes these things, because a vegan lifestyle.
Sorry, what countries did you just mention?
Africa, I'm just saying Africa and India.
Okay.
Just countries as a whole. Just talking about accessibility. Sometimes it may be a case of they can access these things as well. I know there's plants everywhere and in these countries, but if we're looking at people that live below normal means, how can they live that healthier lifestyle when all they've been brought up with is, like you said, the poor man's food, whether it be plants or meat with a bit of ugali on the side or something. That's what we class as poor eating. That's all they can access. So what do we say to those people that can only access those kind of things? Because sometimes it is an access issue, especially in the countries that are living below their means.
But
that's a really good point.
You see, what I meant by accessibility is this. For instance, if you want to go and if you want to go and have a burger, how much is a burger?
A what, sorry?
A burger.
Oh, a burger. I don't know, maybe about £5-6.
And if you were to go into a restaurant and order a plant-based kind of food, how much will you?
Maybe a pound extra.
A pound extra.
Just because.
That's
how they do the vegan thing.
That is what I was talking about, accessibility. You see, in Africa, plants are all over. We can easily access it. If we are to compare with, let me say, animal kind of food, and if I'm to go, if I'm here in the UK, if I eat my ugali and kales and spinach, that is termed as very nutritional, and very few people, especially the knowledgeable ones, will actually prefer that kind of life. So when they see you doing that, you are deemed to be like, either you are high in class or you are knowledgeable enough to know. But back in Africa, when someone eats ugali and kales, that's a poor man's nutrition. So when
it's culture.
It's culture. So when they see a meat, they say, okay, that guy has some sort of money, can afford. So
but you're right. A lot of things, the way in which a lot of things are perceived, in fact, everything, the way something is perceived is culturally determined. And I'm glad that you brought up the point about accessibility and just giving some more clarity to what you were asking, because the idea of accessibility is a lot more nuanced than what mentioned earlier about different countries, because right here in the UK, marginalized communities, and kind of the intersections between race and class play a huge role in people's ability to access. So if we go back a few years to, for example, the COVID pandemic, and we look at the communities that were disproportionately affected, it was us. It was the Black community, and the statistics kind of show that, and that has to do with our experience as Black people being marginalised in Western world, in Western countries, and so doing research, prior research into that, I understood that the healthcare system, played a huge part in how it marginalised people of colour, and it had to do, and it has to do, because this is something that it continues. It has to do with policies that are in place. It has to do with the fact that spaces and services are made easier for particular groups to access over other groups. And so it's an interplay of many variables that we need to think of. When we think about accessibility. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's very important.
How can individuals make more conscious food choices? And these questions makes me remember the first time we met you in church. You were actually doing a PowerPoint on this, and I remember I came to you. I was in Ellesbury at that time, and I joined Invazoom, and I asked Maxine, please, enough talking, because I know we people, we talk a lot but do less. There's less actions. So, and I remember you actually came back at me and say, I'm a small person. I tell you say, I'm not that kind of a force. I'm a small person, but I am doing it to my capability. This is where I'm starting, and I'm advocating for that. And today, actually, we are grateful for you coming to the podcast and actually advocating it more, trusting that more views will be coming and listening to what you have said today.
I feel honoured that you invited me to listen to my perspective, because as I said, I'm not an expert.
But it's because we see the fruits of your advocating. We've tasted the food. We've looked into. You've pushed us to look into things ourselves. What we should be doing. What we should be looking at.
About having
and it's about
important conversations.
So what are some of the practical steps that churches or faith-based organizations can take to promote this healthier lifestyle?
Know what you're eating. Know what you are eating, and the best way that I know what's going into my body is I'm preparing it. Let's stay away from, or have less of foods like pre-packaged foods. And I know because of lifestyle, we're sometimes forced in a situation. I don't own a microwave. I haven't for the past 8 years, because I don't. We are surrounded by radio waves. We already live in a society where we are just surrounded by things that are not healthy for us. So I just I just made a decision. My husband doesn't have one. We don't. And that's a conscious choice that we made based on you know, the potential harm to your health, you know, microwaves can have, you know, can do.
So you think like churches should bring more talks about that, or
Absolutely.
say like back in Africa, we used to have, we still have it. We used to have agriculture as part of this subject in our secondary education, and then it had its practical exams on it. So it used to teach people about the nutrition and all those traditional kind of food that our ancestors used to have. And some of the schools will actually be engaged in what you call the CBOs, where these are small, let me say, organizations that come together to equip the community for whatever kind of focus they have to build up the community. So if it's
lovely.
My
cousin's doing that.
Yeah. So if it's for food security, they do a lot of that, and a lot of schools are also involved in that. So
that's great. That's
you being born here, and you see the challenges.
Yes.
In terms of now that you're vegan, what sort of practices do you think churches, let me say, will actually help foster this? By, let me say, what kind of practical steps will church actually have?
That is just an amazing question. My cousin, Winston Lindsay, he he opened a community hub in the Bilston area, and it's a CIC. It's called Wolverhampton Wellbeing Hub. And what he has done, he's gone into partnership with a range of service providers to engage with the community, to serve the community. He's a Christian, and he wanted to. He noticed during COVID that a lot of the adult service users in particular did not have access, you know, and especially I mean, when the lockdown was lifted, this is something that he recognised, that adult service users did not have access when the daycare centres, for example, had closed down. And for some, you know, going to a daycare centre, having a meal there, that is something that they're depending on, and they don't necessarily, you know, have, you know, the resources or opportunities to have a meal outside of that. So he, you know, saw that there was a need that needed to be met, and he went ahead and opened, in partnership with the ARC, which is, you know, they are specialists in providing healthcare, and he, you know, opened this hub, and he's gone into partnership with you know, just many services, as I mentioned, but one wonderful you know, project that he went into partnership with is called the Front Room. I don't know if anybody has heard of that. It's called the Front Room, and it was it was started off as a mobile exhibition, and it was featured in the art gallery, Wolverhampton Art Gallery, in the Black History Month 2022. And what Juliet Lindsay is the creator and curator of this, and what she did is she created a space to resemble the front room of an Afro-Caribbean home in the 60s. She's done an amazing job. But now that is permanently a fixture of the centre that Winston sort of started. And I brought my mum there, and what Juliet also did was create an audible archive.
Okay.
So, when we went, there was quite a few elders. It was a mixture of old and young, elderly and, kind of younger ones. But we sat together in the front room, and it was such a nostalgic, sense, it just made me reflect on, being young and just being in a safe space. And there aren't enough of those. But what my mum did was she just opened up about memories that were in the deep crevices of her mind. She just opened up and she shared, and we all sat and we listened, and then we took time listening to each other's stories and experiences. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful. I say that to say that there is a lot of initiatives. There's a lot of proactive things that we can do in the community, because my cousin Winston Lindsay is an example of that. There's a lot of needs in our community, and when we start to put our minds together, we just have conversations, that's where proaction
I'd love to finalize this with two last questions. And the first question is this: you see, how do we shift the mindset that eating plant-based is a rejection of our traditions? So African, we have our own traditions. We say we are meat-based. Herbs are just a side kind of food. Rather than it being an evolution of culture and biblical principles. And then the last question is there any key message you'd like people to take away from this conversation?
Okay, good questions. I think that how we shift people's thinking about anything is to educate and empower. Because that is what's going to do it. People need to understand why it's going to benefit them to eat more plant-based foods, the benefits to their body. If people are educated about those things, then it empowers them to make the right choices for themselves. What things would I like you to take away from this? Just be confident. If you're going to make a decision to do something, just be confident and do it. And be open. So
if I'm going to eat meat, I just be confident and go ahead.
If that's what you want to do, brother. That's
can't get away from meat. Oh my days.
You need to understand first and foremost that you have agency.
Okay.
And a lot of people, they don't think about how much power they have in the choices that they make. So if there's anything I want to promote, is that we are powerful. We have agency. Use that agency to empower yourself, and to benefit yourself with the right choices.
Amazing. Wow, what an amazing discussion. Again, we are so privileged to have our sister in love here. Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to At Home with the Adiambos. There is more to come, more different things, and more different podcasts. So until next time, guys, from the Adiambos.
See you.